How's it going, Jacob?
Good. How you guys doing?
Doing
buddy.
good. Doing good. So tonight we want to chat with you about what you got on your radar going through the legislation. I saw that stuff you put up on Facebook the other day, and then we got a couple of questions. But
Well, there's a lot of poop to shovel through then.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
We
That-
both got a shovel.
that there is. But welcome to the show, everyone who's here joining us. If you have any questions tonight while we kick this off, feel free to ask them if you have any questions for Jacob. We're going to chat with Jacob, and then we're going to talk a little bit about our dear leader Biden's speech today and our thoughts on that.
Absolutely glorious.
Maybe some corrections.
Hey, let's introduce.
Apparently, shall not be infringed is not an absolute statement.
Yeah, there's a lot, but we'll get to that in a minute. And if you want, while you're at it,
Let's introduce.
go ahead and stick around if you want, Jacob, as long as you can or as long as you want to.
I'll stay along as I can.
All right, sounds
All right,
good.
Jacob, go ahead and introduce yourself
Yeah.
and tell the audience what you do and who you are.
Yeah. So my name is Jacob Hibbard. I'm the grassroots director for Americans for Prosperity Utah. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to pushing policies that break down barriers to individuals achieving their potential. So that can range from working on tax issues to regulation to criminal justice reform to free speech. All these things, paving the way, making sure that government is staying within its proper role so that you can pursue your happiness.
Yeah,
Gotta love it.
that's right. Now, and you do a lot of good work. And if we have questions about upcoming bills or bills that have passed, you're who we like to come to. So I saw a post you put on Facebook, I don't know, a week and a half ago. And I'd like you to explain that bill to us and what's going on there.
Yeah, so the new hotness coming out of DC from the Biden administration, he's unveiled his $2.3 trillion quote unquote infrastructure bill. And my goodness, they got the printers going real hot in DC if they want to get another 2.3 trillion spent. But the dirty little secret of this infrastructure bill is the fact that only 6% of it actually goes to things that you could honestly call infrastructure. And it's about $650 billion that goes to things like roads and to bridges, which when you compare them internationally in terms of quality where our roads and bridges are, they're actually pretty good. So in many ways, this is, even if you took it at face value that this is about roads and bridges, there's a lot of questions about whether or not this is needed. But like I said, only 6% of this $2.3 trillion is actually going to roads and bridges, or what you would call infrastructure. This afternoon, I posted another statistic about this, that if you were to look at the amount of money that's being spent on, say, electric cars, the amount of money that's going to be spent on electric cars in this bill is more than the amount of money that's being put towards roads, bridges, ports, airports, and waterways. If you take all that money and put it all together, they're still spending more on one thing, electric cars, than on all of those things combined.
So
And I can give you some highlights or lowlights, I guess you could say, of some of
now
the
when
things.
you say electric cars, that's where Biden signed into law that the GSA is going to maneuver all of its fleet into where available electric fleet, which on an off note, it's funny how certain politicians a week before that was enacted all of a sudden started dumping all of their investments into EV investments.
Is this going to have to do with Elon Musk, or is he out of the game?
He'll probably benefit from it a little bit.
He's going to be the initial beneficiary, I'm sure, until Ford and GM get on there, because Ford and GM will lobby him to where he doesn't even show up on the map. But I think initially He'll be the push. And I don't mind if they want to go to electric cars with the government, that's fine. I don't think the government should have any vehicles. But if they're going to do that, that's fine. I think it's kind of funny. You see Pelosi go and swap a majority of her investments over to electric vehicles a week prior to Biden signing that. But I guess it's legal for them to have insider trading because...
Well, if you got the might, you got the right, I guess.
That's right.
Amen.
And that's the thing is, like, I have no problem per se with electric cars. If people want to innovate and buy themselves an electric car, go for it. God bless you. But it is not the role of government to provide incentives and to use the public money, because the government doesn't have money of its own. That's the dirty little secret that we all forget. Is when government puts money somewhere, it first must take it from someone else,
or
in the form of taxes,
or later take it from someone else. They take a loan out in your name. Actually, right now, I think they're taking a loan out in my great grandchildren's names.
Mm-hmm.
They've even gone beyond the fetus.
I mean, they're taking loans out in names way down there.
Well, and put on top of that, with the amount of money that we're just printing out and borrowing, we're also going to start seeing inflation, which is another way of devalue. So in addition to taking money and taking loans on your name, through the inflation, we're going to devalue the money that you already have. It's another kind of more insidious way of taking money from you. Yeah. But I found a list of some fun. Well, that's
the inflationary market. There's no way we can do what we did last year and not see inflation. I mean, what was it? By October, 33% of all the money ever printed in the United States had been printed in 2021 by the 10th month. That's
crazy.
250 years, and then 33% of that in the 10th month. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but here are some lowlights from some other parts of this bill that's been thrown under the term of infrastructure. $10 billion is going to be used to create what they're calling a civilian climate corps. And what it's going to do is it's an investment to create a new diverse generation of Americans to work conserving our public lands and waters and bolstering community resilience, advancing environmental justice. So it's kind of like a Peace Corps kind of thing, but it's a climate corps. And so $10 billion to that. $20 billion is going to be used to advance racial equity and environmental justice. Then there's $175 billion in subsidies to electric vehicles. So that's in addition to what we already talked about. $213 billion is going to be used to rebuild or retrofit 2 million homes and buildings to make them more green. So what you're seeing here is a lot of the Green New Deal being put into this. $100 billion for new public schools and to make school lunches more green and environmentally friendly.
So eating school lunch that's hand-me-down from the private schools from yesterday? What's the green on that?
That's Brussels.
How do they do that?
They want to make sure that they're reducing or eliminating the use of like paper plates and disposable materials.
Okay.
Is one aspect of how they're going to make it more green.
So they'll use more water and clean. You got to give up somewhere. There's a cost given up. You don't want the garbage, you're going to get the more water usage. I mean, pick your battle.
They'll make the plates out of hemp.
Even then,
and they can smoke them afterwards.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
Don't knock until you try it, David.
the racial equity. Hey, you wait. You're gonna see it's greener for us to eat these farm-grown crickets than it is to eat, large animal protein. So, won't that be tasty?
And then gonna be great.
The good news is you floss while you eat.
Oh man!
You got some.
But there's also another $12 billion that's going to community colleges. A couple of $1 billion are going to be invested to eliminate racial and gender inequalities in STEM fields.
Oh Jesus!
$100 billion
How does that work? How do they decrease how do we buy more transgenders and racial equity in STEM? How do we buy that?
I don't know.
They let
I don't
Asians
know
in the
if that-
college.
You know
how
what
that's
it's going to
supposed
be?
work.
It's going to be specific grants. It's going to be grants that are specific like they are now. You know, a white male, or for a male alone, just a male, there's something like, God, I want to say there's something like only 10 grants over $5,000 for males. But if you're a female, there's 65 grants over five. That's available grants that you can apply for. And what they're just going to explode more grants out there. So if you are a transvestite or I don't know,
Or
transgender,
even just a woman, you know, like if
Yeah.
whatever a woman is now, we don't know what a woman is anymore. But it's presuming you are one. This is supposed to help get you into to STEM, which is really unfortunate because it's really money going down the drain because the Nordic countries have tried this,
yep.
have put massive investments into try to push more women into have a more diverse STEM field, and it's not really made a difference that women aren't choosing these fields despite the investment.
Yeah, the government push has had an adverse reaction in the Norwegian countries. Females tend to go into those caring fields more than any other nations, any other free to choose nations on earth. I wouldn't say that they compete with, say, Saudi Arabia on those, but any other, I guess, free to choose nation, they are the ones where the women tend to rush faster to be nurses and caregivers and doctors. I mean, that's a part of it. That what they don't understand is doctors are a part of that equation, that STEM equation.
Now most college is going online anyway. If some of this money is transitioning the curriculums to online curriculums, it could possibly be a good investment for society.
I doubt the money's going to where it's specifically making colleges more logical. It'll be put in as grants where if you have an identity that allows you to get that grant, that's where it will be. So it'll just be grants stolen from the general public.
Yeah, but speaking of internet, they're going to put $100 billion into expanding broadband, and then another $25 billion into government child care programs. So I don't know how all of these things fall under infrastructure, but it's in the bill. And additionally, it has parts of another really bad bill in it called the PRO Act. The PRO Act is something that's been passed through the House already, and this bill has elements from that. I think partially because they don't think that they can get the PRO Act through the Senate.
So what's
the part of it that they carry over is that this infrastructure bill would eliminate right to work in all 50 states and put independent contractors in a position where it's almost impossible to be
Are they really doing that?
Yeah, no. So the PRO Act
is that legal for them to do?
No, it's unconstitutional.
Yeah.
It should get struck down. The Supreme Court, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, in a Supreme Court case called oh goodness, why am I forgetting? I was going to say Abood, but that's the old standard. But they ruled that coerced public sector unions that a public sector union, you can't be forced to join one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And so they ruled that was unconstitutional. And what the PRO Act would essentially do was it wouldn't force people into public sector unions, but it would force, most employees into private sector unions. And so it would be difficult to try to make a good argument for why, if it's unconstitutional for a public sector union to be forced into a public sector union, why it would be constitutional to be forced into a private sector union. But that's what the PRO Act does. It gets rid of right to work. It pushes people into unions. It would pretty much destroy independent contractors.
Oh, it'd destroy our economy once every product building organization is forced to unionize, you'll see those just collapse in on themselves. We'll see. I mean, where's your international scouts now? You know,
Now, is this taken from the playbook from California? Because I'm pretty sure they did something very similar to this.
Yeah, so this is exactly what they did in California.
And how did it work?
It's the Biden administration, beside billing himself as this amazing moderate that was gonna, not tweet mean things and not lie to you.
well, he's not tweeting because, they hit him with the steroids and the methamphetamine 5 minutes before they point a camera at him, and then they let him go and drool and pass out right after.
Gonna say even then it doesn't last that long.
No, it doesn't. We will talk about the AFT later, though.
But he's brought a lot of Californians into his administration, and so a lot of the really bad, crappy policies that's had people leaving California, they're going to impose nationwide. Which, if you're from California, you like that because now there's nowhere else to go. And a lot of these companies and businesses are leaving California because it's just so terrible. And I mean, President Biden also this week talked about the importance of establishing a global corporate tax rate so that when we raise the corporate taxes, we don't have companies leaving to other countries that are more tax friendly. And so establishing this global tax rate, corporate tax rate, so that people have no incentive to leave because we've raised their taxes. So it's just another version of Californication of the United States. But yeah, this PRO Act does all these terrible things. It really empowers unions. It's going to push everybody into unions and get rid of right to work. And the infrastructure bill has aspects of that as well.
We're going to have to change this show. This show will become a travel show. What country are you going to escape to show? And we can have people come on.
Some really solid, liberty-minded people who are actually exploring options of where might be a good spot to set up shop when things go to pot.
I wonder how Costa Rica is.
I'm going to Liberland.
It's not a country yet.
Yeah, to you maybe.
It's still a little marshland with maybe a house on it.
That's good enough.
It needs to have a city. It needs not a city, but it needs to at least have a roof.
It's got a great tax rate.
Yes, it does.
0.
Yeah, when no one lives there, you can have that tax rate. When Liberland builds up, I'll show up.
Now, they do have e-residency, so
yeah,
go ahead and register your business over there, and you can enjoy the tax breaks.
Until, Biden puts in this global corporate tax. I mean, what it'll do is it'll make Sweden, Finland, Norway, all those socialist wonderlands, they'll have to raise their corporate taxes because their corporate taxes are low. Like,
well, how do you get other countries to go by this new global citizen tax rate?
Probably the same way we get them to sell their oil for the dollar.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy when you talk about the socialist utopias of the Nordic countries. The Heritage Foundation and the Cato Institute both do measures of economic freedom globally. And a lot of these socialist wonder worlds are more economically free in terms of regulations and tax codes than we are.
That's because Bernie's retarded, I think is the word I'm looking for. Bernie doesn't understand when he says socialist. And maybe it's that he's confused. Maybe he thinks, maybe his Overton window's real broad, but they have strong private property rights there. They just have a large tax rate to support that safety net. That's it. Other than that, you started
backing off of it too. They've had to cut spending on it because it's just not sustainable.
They spent all the money they made for the last 152. Well, all the money they made through the 17 and 1800s, all the money they made, they had spent it all, and it was a confirmed socialist. Their finance minister came out. I forget his name. He came out and said he was a confirmed socialist, like one of those guys that, dreamed of Gorby and all that shit. He came out and said, we got to stop this. We can't afford it.
Yep. And they've used up all the oil money that they when they nationalized the oil industry. And so they've been living off the fumes of capitalism, and they're going to have to lean more and more into it if they're going to keep going. But here on, where we are doing the opposite. We are leaning more and more into socialism.
I
And-
think the thing that's going to destroy us is that we can't get any kind of cultural unity in this nation. And I think that's going to destroy us because we can't, at least in Norway and Sweden and all those countries, they're pretty culturally homogenous, religiously, culturally, ideal wise. But here we've got a split, and we keep seeing that split raise its ugly head to where our politics becomes about that split, not about real issues.
And that's just one more reason we should split.
Hey, I agree.
And, two countries out of the Americas, it wouldn't be a bad idea.
Well, they would, in order to put forward that PRO Act, they would have to breach the 10th Amendment. Not that it's ever stopped them before. There's probably maybe, 2 out of 100 senators that knows what the 10th Amendment is. And I'll bet a congressman thinks there might be one out there, but they don't know what it is. And so it's
none of the amendments to the Constitution are absolute.
Yeah.
It's a living document,
So-
I was told.
Let's roll into a couple of questions we had for you. All right. So what's up with Utah? This is a Utah centric one. What's up with Cox and his cell phone porn bill? Break that down for me.
Oh yeah. So this bill was passed in the state legislature. Essentially, what it does is it requires businesses that sell cell phones.
Will it be the manufacturer or the carrier or the specific business?
The specific businesses, from what I understand.
Okay.
And so it would require them to install on every phone before they sell it filters that would block pornography from them. So that's what it does.
How much money did they waste arguing this on the floor? Because
I wasn't following this one too closely.
It reads that you
so I
can
don't know how much
remove the
time they
filter.
spent.
As the owner, you can remove the filter. 2, it makes it so that a business selling you stuff has to be able to backdoor that same stuff they're selling you. So you Republican dumbasses, you're arguing about the tech monopoly. Well, why not sign some more in? Make it so they can woohoo with your finger when you buy stuff. All right. 3, we've got to wait for 5 other states to sign on. So it's null and void until that happens.
It's just a virtue signal.
Yeah,
really.
How much money did you waste doing this? Why don't, when we have some droughts coming up in the future, why don't we look into that a little bit? How about when we look at, we've got a federal government that's about to go insane, why don't we start hedging that? Instead, why don't we just sit and argue about, we don't like porn on the phone? That is an issue for people who need to parent more, not an issue
I
for
don't
the government.
I don't like violence and gore and blood and guts on my phone. I'd rather have sex than violence. So maybe they need to virtue signal my direction as well. And then, if we're just going to go down the moral ladder, what else do we have to get a blocker for?
Well, that's the thing. It really comes down to whose responsibility is this really? It's the responsibility of parents.
Yeah.
This is, in my opinion, these are parents taking, shirking their duty, their responsibility to be responsible for their children's phones and putting it on the state. And when the state puts a burden or a duty on somebody that's not a natural occurring duty from natural rights, that's an imposition. That's a form of tyranny. And so that's something that we definitely opposed. But I think, kind of speaking to what you were saying, though, Jared, about bills coming down the line from the federal level, why weren't we talking about that? There were efforts to block any federal legislation that would apply to guns. There was a bill that was proposed in the legislature. The governor refused to support it or to sign it if it got passed. So it died in the legislature. But that's really, in my opinion, where we need to be putting our most efforts is, who's your county sheriff? You need to find out where they stand on guns so that, make sure that these are the people who are supposed to be enforcing these things. If you can push them to say, not here, that's the best thing that we can do right now until there are any future elections at a federal level.
Well, join us next week. We've got Tooele 2A guys coming on. We're going to be bouncing some ideas back and forth with them. But yeah, okay. So Cox, you bald-headed moron. I'm bald-headed, so I can say that. We're of the same group. But how about this PRO Act? Why not look into that and bolster economic freedom in the state of Utah before we're run over by Californians? Why not figure that out? Let's make something like that happen. Don't leave us swinging in the wind.
Well, that's the thing is we passed a bill this session relating to independent contracting with tech in the tech industry. So things like Uber and other kind of tech-based services. Mm-hmm. That was specifically a response to the stuff that happened in California. That passed this session. That would get completely overruled by the PRO Act and the elements of the infrastructure bill that apply to that area. This is total, complete federal overreach. The federal government has no legitimate business dictating to a business and to an individual what the terms of their consensual contract should be.
Or to a state. Their job is to make sure that states sell amongst themselves. The states leave the doors open for people in those states to sell amongst themselves. That's
a
their
national
job.
Free trade area, essentially, is what the federal government is supposed to do in terms of the economy.
Well, you know what? The black market will... you know what? No, do it. Because the black market will explode. Everyone will start working under the table. You'll start seeing working under the table for major corporations.
And this is fantastic economic policy for Bitcoin. Just saying.
Yeah.
Well, it's also, from a big bit, yes, the big corporations will pay a price. It will be painful for them. But at the same time, what's going to crush the competition from the small to mid-tier businesses? Forcing them to abandon the independent contractor model.
Yep.
And forcing them to take these people on as employees. And then that brings in all the healthcare stuff, all the union stuff. I mean, yes, Amazon, their bottom line will be lower in some ways because of this, or they'll be hurt, but it's going to destroy the competition as well. So a lot of these big businesses are loving this because it's going to mow the field down. What we are seeing is a move towards corporatism, towards economic fascism, of big business and government having this illicit affair. And unless we can stop it, the future for the American economy and for the rights of American citizens is not bright.
Yeah, it's going to get rough. All right. So not to keep you too long, and I know Dave needs to get home to his darling wife, I want to roll into our dear leader's speech today. So I took some notes. We're not going to make anyone suffer through the speech with us. First, Kamala Harris comes on and introduces him. But she has a little bit of a heartfelt, everyone cry with me moment, because if they can't argue on facts, they argue on emotion. So some of the comments: reasonable gun safety. I think reasonable gun safety is teaching children young how to safely handle firearms. Both sides of the aisle. She's stating that both sides of the aisle wants to see a change, that want to see reform in our gun laws. And I imagine you've got some Republicans up in New Jersey and whatever, but I don't think so. I imagine you see Democrats down in Texas and Louisiana, Georgia. I don't think so. So I think they're overreaching on that. So then Biden comes out, and I just wanted to kind of go through some of the lies he said. You can't yell fire in a movie theater. That law, that phrase was stated when they were, what was their names? A Jewish couple, an older Jewish couple during World War I were handing out flyers telling young men not to go to war. They got arrested. And that's where that phrase, you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater, came out when they got arrested. And I don't know why their names are blanking me now, but they are a blank.
Now, what does that have to do with passing out anti-war flyers?
That was
It's a free speech case.
yeah, it was a free speech case, which the abortion Roe versus Wade is a free speech case as well. Everyone argues that abortions became legal. No. The ability to keep your abortion quiet became legal. That's what Roe versus Wade was about. It was a First Amendment argument in the Supreme Court, but no one takes a minute to even read it. Anyway, so this older couple, they got tried for treason or, sedition. And they didn't get found guilty, but that was the argument in court in front of the Supreme Court, was you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater. And actually, the Supreme Court, I think, went back on that in 1956, if I remember. It was argued that you can specifically yell fire in a crowded movie theater. So,
Especially if there's a fire.
shut up, Joe. And then he said the Second Amendment didn't include any weapon. Well, the Second Amendment didn't preclude any weapon, is how that is correctly stated. We had privateers with cannons on their ships. We had private militias in Connecticut, in Delaware, in New York. What a private militia was a group of guys that got together and bought artillery.
Well organized, I think,
Yes.
is the argument, though.
Well, they couldn't imagine this gun. Well, the First Amendment, they couldn't imagine Twitter. So, should we keep the First Amendment to, quill written notes? No. But you also had like the Puckle cannon, which was a revolving flintlock or smooth bore cannon, which shot 50
Their
to
version of
75.
a Gatling gun, essentially.
Yes. And today it is legal to own a Gatling gun. It's legal. They had the Puckle cannon. They had the main defense cannon, which was a cannon that had it had as many barrels as the guy could afford to put on it, that you could fire either all at once or you could fire in procession. And you could set it up to where it fired one after the other, so it acted like a machine gun. Then he wants to talk about reining in ghost guns. All right.
What's a ghost gun, Jared?
Okay, so what they call a ghost gun is an 80%er. An 80% gun. There are companies that sell 80% guns. You buy them for usually about 20% cheaper than you would the fully manufactured gun, if you buy them on the cheap. If you buy them for the same stuff, the price equals the same, especially the time you put into them. But what they send you, it's the lower receiver, is an unmilled or an unfinished milled. It's an 80% completed receiver. So you can recognize that is a lower receiver on, say, an AR or a Kalashnikov model. But you have to drill out the holes for the trigger, for the magazine retention clip, for the selector switch. You have to drill those out and mill them, and it has a high failure rate. So they're stating that that ghost guns are used in all these crimes. Well, they've got 3 of them, and I think their burden of proof has not been met. But that shooting in California by that Muslim husband and wife, they say that was done by a ghost gun. I haven't seen any proof of that. They haven't shown the gun that he used to be one that was manufactured at a home. What he wants to do is he wants to make it so you have to serialize your ghost gun, which is cool. Serialize it, If I build one, I'm going to stamp a big A1 on it, First gun I ever built from scratch, except for, whatever. But that's what they're calling ghost guns. You've also got the 3D printed guns, but what they're worried about is a serialized number stamped onto the gun, and I think that goes for their... I don't think ghost guns, I think that's their weak argument to make sure they know where every gun is so that when they decide to come take them, they can take them. For those of you who are fans of the evil assault rifle, if you look at it, the only part of that weapon system that has to be serialized is the part that carries the trigger. So on your say you buy a deer rifle, they'll have a serial on the side of the barrel because it's a wood stock. And sometimes they'll have a serial either on the trigger guard or on a strap that sits in front of the trigger guard. But what has to be serialized is the operating mechanism of that gun. So that'll be on your lower receiver on the AR, lower receiver on the AK. And then when you buy one, sometimes the company you buy it from will throw a serial number on the barrel as well, but you can buy aftermarket barrels and replace them.
So you can literally like do your damage and get rid of your barrel, just put another one on, and when they come to try to do the fingerprints for the bullets, they see the new barrel and they can't really identify the scratches on the bullet, right?
You could, yeah. I mean, theoretically. But let's look at it. So most of those 80%ers are built by guys who are enthusiasts for the gun. They're not criminals thinking, I'm going to go put 25 hours in my garage, with a drill press and a die set and build this gun so I can go rob a bank. That sounds opposite. They want money quick. And it takes time to mill these guns.
That's a high IQ sport, too, if I may say so. And
yes,
normally,
it is.
Normally, people of that caliber aren't out there committing crime to stick people up for their bubble gun.
Well, they are, but their crimes are committed on Wall Street or in public office.
They're called banksters.
And politicians. But, so they're trying to make this claim, but I have seen zero evidence of any of these ghost guns being used in crimes. Usually it's an enthusiast who wants the pride of knowing that precision rifle that he owns, he built. He knows it inside and out. He knows every function of it, where every spring goes, how it goes. He plays around with tensions on the trigger, on the hammer, and what have you.
Now let me play devil's advocate here, Jared. None of these gun restrictions are really that big of a deal. So maybe the Democrats are playing their Hollywood part because they have a role to play. They have customers to satisfy, and those customers want to see gun legislation. They don't really understand gun legislation. They're usually of lower IQ caliber, and they just want to see them do something that has the word gun in it, and that's what they're going to do to satisfy those
I agree,
souls.
but why lie to the nation while you do it?
Well, there's also something really important that Dave said. He said gun legislation, but we're talking about a presidential executive order.
Yeah, this isn't legislation.
So this is not legislation. This is tyranny. The executive.
Yes.
And I recall that Constitution that he refers to says that all legislative power, all ALL, all legislative power is vested in Congress.
Mm-hmm.
And what is legislative power? Power to make law.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter. Biden could write an executive order about bowel movements. It doesn't matter. He has no law-making authority. So, I mean, even though, like you said, Dave, this might not sound like the worst thing in the world, it's unconstitutional wholly just because of where it's coming from, not even paying attention to what the subject matter is.
Now, did Trump do the same thing?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
With the bump stocks.
The bump stock ban, which got rescinded by the Supreme Court
Exactly.
after 2 years.
Again, just playing the game.
So people who got their stuff, okay, riding along
gotta
good.
Satisfy
then
everyone.
it becomes illegal, so you get rid of it, essentially just stripping the people of their personal property for 2 years. And then do you get it back? How has the AFT been on redelivery of your personal property?
And it is the AFT now, right? Is that how that works?
The AFT. He said it, I think, 3 times. So AFT it is. All right. Next is a pistol with modified braces. All right. I think he lost an opportunity to expand on this.
So I'm looking at something where like maybe someone handicapped is trying to use a pistol.
He says it makes him better. Slide your phone forward just a little bit. It's getting some transference. He says it makes him better. Now, I don't know what he's talking about. Now, you do have pistols where they put a grip that's forward of the regular grip that maybe holds a magazine in it. those, if he was talking about those do not make the weapon more functional, better, or anything. It just makes it so that you can't conceal it and you play hell finding a holster for it, right? That's all those do. So if he's targeting those, all right, fine. That's some people may find that an additional piece of equipment on your pistol to make it functional. Me, I think that's just someone painting a pig and putting bows on it. It doesn't do anything functional. Now, if he's talking about the AR and AK model pistols, there he has an argument. Now, what makes okay, pistols are rifled. Rifle means the lines and grooves that run down the barrel that spin the bullet as it goes out to give it a more uniform trajectory. So, what makes a rifle legal is the muzzle, the end of the barrel, has to be 16 inches away from the trigger, and it's 18 inches on a shotgun. Now, to make those into a pistol, you can have a pistol shotgun also. That's where it slides beneath that 16-inch threshold. So that makes it, and then you get into the grounds whether you either have a pistol or a short barreled rifle. You'll commonly hear them called SBRs. And the difference between those, an SBR, you have to have a Federal Firearms Act tax stamp to own. And what that means is that weapon has a stock. It means it has a stock that goes against your shoulder. The pistols, they do make forearm braces, and I think that may be what he's talking about, is a forearm brace. And that will make that, AR pistol or AK pistol more accurate, because you'll be able to have that 3 point of contact versus just 1 or 2 points of contact.
How does a less accurate gun save lives?
Well, it's a good question. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, it will be. Would that guy down in Texas have the kill count that he had if he was less accurate? Probably not. I mean, I don't know, but we don't know the distance of all the shooting. I mean, they haven't put out the criminal investigation and forensics on that yet, because he's still alive and they've got to investigate that. So that won't come out probably until right around trial. We'll start seeing that bleed out.
See, I see people hitting other people on accident instead of getting their target, because these killings are always in a place where lots of people are. It's not like they're out there trying to find one single guy.
And that's true. We don't know. I think until the forensics come out, we can't argue that. I honestly don't think. I mean, had that been a big difference, there would be no reason why he either A, couldn't just buy an illegal gun to commit that act, because he bought it legally. He had the check. All right. He mentioned 53 women are shot a month by their partners in domestic violence on average. And that, I don't know. I didn't look that up. But that is a pretty sad state, and I think that's where we need to look at. I don't know. We've got to bolster families, I guess. I don't know how to cure that. I mean, these mass shooters all have one thing in common, is they have a messed up family, usually no father in the home. I mean, that's pretty common. And then he wants to strengthen red flag laws, and that one I want to go into a little bit.
This one scares me a little bit.
Red flag laws are sending the police after someone to take their property away without due process. And I'm all about due process. That's what marked us out as a great nation amongst all other nations when we were first formed, was due process. We didn't have the ability for someone to write a writs of assistance written into our Constitution. And I think we're slowly losing that. We lost that with Title IX in the colleges, and the red flag laws are a loss of that. And let's face it, Trump lost me when he did the bump stock ban, and he bolstered red flag laws and said, and I quote, take the guns now, due process later. That was his words. And I think due process is extremely important on all circumstances. So he wants to bolster red flag laws. You know, I don't know. Maybe we should ask Duncan Lemp how he feels about those. You know, 21-year-old sleeping next to his pregnant fiance. And from all accounts, they shot him through the window. He was asleep in his bed, and they shot him while he laid in his bed. That's the accounts. And, you know, I know the police are saying, oh, no, he got a gun and was charging us or whatever. But the bullets came from outside, came in and hit him while he was in the bed.
Wow.
Next to
they
her.
probably had an arm brace.
So
That's a pretty accurate shot.
So he wants to bolster. Well, it was a SWAT team that shot him. Send a SWAT team after him, which is the guys that'll, you know, execute red flag laws. You know, the same guys that honestly should only be used to rescue hostages will come to your house. In Vermont, an old guy, they came up there on a red flag cause, and once he saw that they had no warrant to take his guns, he was telling them no, and they shot and killed him. Also in New York, you had that young National Guardsman. A buddy of his in the unit got mad at him. I shouldn't say a buddy. You know, a buddy wouldn't do that, but a person in his unit got mad at him and called the police and said he had guns there, and he ended up in a unarmed holdout against the police for, I think, 47 hours. That happened 2 years ago. So yeah, red flag laws, bullshit. You know, we got to have due process, and if there's a reason, if they're a threat, then I think the prosecution can do their diligence to put a case together, whether he's there or not, to decide whether the guns need to be taken away. Not just say, oh, yeah, we'll go take him away because we don't like him, or an ex-wife of his said that he's erratic, you know, because ex-wives always tell the truth about their ex-husbands. But yeah, those are kind of my takeaways. I've got to change my shirt. This has to be changed. It's the AFT, alcohol, firearms, and tobacco. He even said that too. You know, real proud of Dementia Joe. And then one last thing I wanted to talk about, David Chipman. David Chipman is the new head of our AFT. David Chipman is one of those guys. Now, I don't know what the listeners' feelings on Waco are. Waco was murder of children by the government. And that's not just my feeling. I mean, that's pretty much any outside the government investigation that's been done has found that to be the case. And David Chipman is the guy that gets out there and lies about it and supports it and says that the Branch Davidians shot down 2 National Guard helicopters. Two helicopters were shot at. One of them was actually struck once, no damage. But he's saying they shot him down. He stands up for him. He's a big gun grabber while, you know, enjoying the rights and privileges to carry a gun all himself. But yeah, so he's our new AFT head honcho.
Congratulations, David.
Yeah. God, why has it got to be a guy named David? It's always them Davids. Slaying Goliath.
Don't trust him.
Yeah.
Or just walk away. That's your best bet.
So what are your thoughts on all that, Jacob?
Oh, it's bad. Like I said earlier, it's just on its face unconstitutional just because of the branch it's coming from. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at what the Second Amendment says, even if you want to say, well, it only means the militia. George Mason clarified for us that the entirety of the people is the militia.
Yep.
So there's so many quotes from the founding fathers and from the founding generation clarifying that the individual right to own a firearm is enshrined by the Second Amendment. This is a strike at the Second Amendment. None of us should be surprised by it, but we should all be incensed and ready to defend because it's not going to stop. And, you know, so many people, you know, they get upset, they get frustrated, but we have to do more than just post or tweet about it. We need to reach out to our officials. You have a sheriff in your county. Reach out to them. Find out where they stand on this. Make your case. Organize with other people who are like-minded, because that's what's going to take to stop this tyranny that's on the rise.
Well, I'd like you to come on again sometime after, or maybe during, while we talk to these Tooele 2A boys. But apparently we've been trying to push that Second Amendment sanctuary through Tooele County. Like Utah County got not a law passed, not an ordinance, but they got a non-binding resolution passed. But Tooele is saying we can't pass an ordinance because there is a state law that makes it so that all the counties fall under the state. And if we break away from that, that'll give Summit and Salt Lake County the opportunity to break away in the other direction and restrict in the other direction, which I agree with. But how do we get it through the state? Because it seems like we have no bold men willing to spend any political capital for good. We don't have a John Adams willing to spend political capital to make sure in the colonies that there would be due process. We don't have a George Washington or a George Mason or a Thomas Jefferson or a Madison or even a Hamilton. I'll try not to puke in my mouth saying that are willing to expend their political capital in the places they need to be. Now, Trump, he seemed to be a little bit willing, but I think he was not educated enough to take on that job. I think that was his biggest failure, because he surrounded himself with the same sycophants that keep getting us into the mucks and the mires. But we don't have those people. I mean, even now, just a Sam Adams, a firebrand to get in there and cause a ruckus would be amazing, to get the word out. And we don't have people willing to spend their political capital, and people that are willing to spend it get thrown out by the media and the politicians as soon as they get there. And that seems to be an uphill battle. And the only end I see to this is all out tyranny or secession. That's the only outcomes I see right now. Because every year the government takes another little bite, takes a nibble. They come in raining hell and taking a big chunk, and then it ends up backing up to a nibble. But every year, I guarantee when Trump did that bump stock ban, that's because he had one of them same sycophant, ATF guys chewing on his ear saying, yeah, this is the way to do it. And he trusts the guys around him. He trusts the guys that, that Bush had in, or that,
make a sacrifice. That's probably what he heard. Make a sacrifice.
Instead of him sitting down and saying, all right, let me look at this clearly. Let me crack open a book and read about this for a minute and read where it comes from and why this mentality's there, and make a decision off of that. He went off, the people want an emotional charge out of me, I'll give them an emotional charge. And that's what he did. And we need to have somebody that's willing to go up there, spend their political capital to keep the idea alive. Because, do or don't, we're going to end up in a bad place.
Problem is, it doesn't look like a very good investment from my perspective. If I had political capital to spend and I wanted to keep the society free, it's probably easier just to go my separate way and try to start my own country rather than try to fix a blue-haired mob of
But where do you
liberals.
start your own country?
I don't know, man. But, it just seems easier, even though I don't know.
There is nowhere to start your own country. There's not a piece of property that's not spoken for.
Antarctica is even spoken for.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
According to the Russians, huh?
And us, and the Chinese, and Great Britain, they all signed it. Antarctica has,
Well, it's the Arctic that has the Russian bases in it right now, right?
Even the moon has treaties signed that we can't go and build there. There is nowhere. I'll bet Mars, they're working on it right now. So yeah. So there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to start a country. Liberland is a beautiful idea, but one, it's a sliver. I mean, Liberland is smaller than the city of Tooele. And two, they can't even build there yet. It's just poised to be overrun. And it's almost like those other countries surrounding it and the rest of the countries in the world are playing games with it just to keep it from building. They'll argue against it from one side of their mouth and for it from the other. And it's a beautiful idea, but let's face it, the United States is the last stand. We're the last country that has the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. We're the last country that has speech, that has self-defense, that has right to your property, place, and things. We're the only one that has all those things. And granted, we're losing them. We've lost a lot of them. You can argue, with civil asset forfeiture, we lost a substantial chunk. You're not secure in your property, place, and things, your papers.
The motion's set in place. The motion is forward. We're losing our rights. It's done. I just don't see a recovery from this.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, who do we got on the horizon in the state running on a state level that we see might be able to, or would even try to argue this stuff? At least get the word out there on the floor.
I mean, there are a few people in the legislature who are pretty solid. The auditor's pretty solid, but we need more.
Yeah. All them boys down in probably Cedar City and St. George, right?
Some of them are good from down there. Some of them less so much from St. George.
Do they run a big swing? They've got the outstanding ones, and then they've got the dog shit on the other side. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they got some extremes down there, but I mean, there was a lot to like from this last legislative session, but there were a lot of misses too.
Yeah, I like
nothing passed that was too terrible, but there were several good things that got killed.
Yeah. Well, I like the bill to bring education back into schools. I thought it got shut down wrongly. Well, one, maybe he, what was his name? Maybe he should have worded it more strongly that we will have firearms education in schools, not that we can. Maybe he should have worded it strongly, because they shot it down saying, oh, they can already do that, so why put a bill forward?
Well, if they can already do that, where do we start here in Tooele?
Yeah. Well, parents can already shut off porn on their kids' phones. So why did we do that? How much money did we waste doing that? And then, come to think of it, are we going to pay to build that filter? Is that going to come out of our coffers? Because
the enforcement will.
The enforcement will, sure, yeah. And and then how do you enforce it? What, are you going to be asleep in your bed at night and hear your 14-year-old son's window crash in, and a SWAT team comes fast roping in like off of South Park? The kids wanking off to some
Cosmopolitan,
some naked pictures.
Whatever Hunter Biden had on his laptop.
I'll bet it's a lot less than that. Hunter Biden. Yeah, talk about that. Let's talk about that. Hunter Biden illegally buys.
Get going.
Okay,
you guys just talk about it.
All right. Yeah, we're gonna cut out of here in 2 minutes, but real quick, Hunter Biden buys a gun illegally because he's a drug user. You're not allowed to buy a gun if you're a drug user, according to the FA 117A form you got to fill out. Right? You're not allowed to buy a gun if you're a habitual drug user. He buys a gun. His brothers, widows, whatever, the lady he's sleeping with that used to sleep with his brother. I'm not cringing at all here. Not at all. Anyway, so she doesn't like him owning the gun. So she takes it and illegally disposes of it in a dumpster next to an elementary school. Now, do I see the AFT talking to Hunter Biden and or his brother's widow right now? Food for thought. All right. Thanks for joining us, man.
No problem.
Anything else coming up in the future, just give us a shout out. We love having you on. If I see anything else, I'll reach out to you. Well,
Sounds great. Thank you so much, guys, for having me on and
have
for
a good
everything
night,
you guys
buddy.
do.
Yes, thank you.
We'll see ya.
Bye.